It has to be joyful, effortless, fun. TV defeats its own purpose when it's pushing an agenda or trying to defeat other TV or being proud or ashamed of itself for existing. It's TV. It's comfort. It's a friend you've known so well and for so long. You just let it be with you. And it needs to be okay for it to have a bad day or phone in a day. And it needs to be okay for it to get on a boat with LeVar Burton and never come back. Because eventually, it all will.
The cast share one last laugh before filing out of the space that over the years had become their home. The main character turns to give the room one last look before turning off the lights and closing the door. This is a classic example of what would have once been considered a perfect series finale. Well, for a traditional American sitcom.
One of those great old sitcom finales.
As a screenwriter hoping to work in TV, it has become increasingly important to learn how to construct and plan for the ending of your series, as often a mishandled ending can spell death to the legacy of your show. Popular screenwriting books and theories on storytelling are all based on the same premise, that you will be able to complete the story. And much of the structure is based off of a planned ending that thematically ties together the story and brings a dramatic resolution to the conflict and tension therein. But writing for television is different, both in terms of a structure that is more fractured and episodic, but also due to the uncertainty that network influence brings. There are few true auteurs working in Hollywood, but even fewer on television.
Mac, D, Frank. The bar's done.
Well, hang on a second.
Actually, it's
we're
not
actually,
done.
we're still,
We're
in
still
here.
here. Shh, just let me...
I'm exploring an issue today that comedy writers have never really had to concern themselves with before. The difficulty in constructing long-term stories that could be forcibly ended before the ending can ever be fully realized. Let's have a look at some recent sitcom endings from the last 10 years and analyze their approaches on a storytelling level. Some of the examples had the opportunity to orchestrate a planned ending, while others ended prematurely due to cancellation and network pressures.
So, bring it on!
Santa Clarita Diet was a Netflix series created by Victor Fresco about suburban realtor Sheila, played by Drew Barrymore, who gets a new lease on life when she becomes undead. The series is light and refreshing and received critical acclaim mostly because of its honest portrayal of a healthy communicative marriage between Sheila and Joel, played by Timothy Olyphant. The show's narrative also moves at an incredibly quick, breakneck pace, with each episode usually ending with a promising teaser of yet another threat that the family would have to face. The tension of the series was in seeing how much the Hammond marriage would be able to take, and how it could grow and change to respond to these new threats. Having the series focus so heavily on this central dynamic provided it with a powerful serial through-line that deserved a heartwarming payoff. Unfortunately, in the series finale episode The Cult of Sheila, that wasn't quite what we got.
Joel?
Hello.
The final scene of the episode served as a great season finale, promising an exciting change to the dynamic between Joel and Sheila. However, Netflix decided that they weren't that excited to see what would happen next, and cancelled the show a few weeks after the finale aired. This process of cancellation is not necessarily an uncommon occurrence for the streaming services in recent years, nor is it an unknown challenge for the creators. When asked about the survival of his own series, Fresco had this to say: "We know they like the show, and I like to say that the humans there seem to love the show. I don't know how the algorithm feels about us, and the algorithm makes a lot of decisions ultimately, so I just don't know." Here's a list of all of the shows that the Netflix algorithm has cancelled in this year alone. Only 5 years ago, Netflix was trying to depict a better-than-TV model by bringing back cult hits like Arrested Development and putting money towards new and unique projects that would not normally be seen on TV. Unfortunately, now, very few new shows make it past a third season. At an INTV conference in Israel in March, Cindy Holland, the Netflix head of original content, spoke about their decision process. When we're investing, we decide how much to invest based on the audience that will show up. If the audience doesn't show up, we think about the reason to continue to invest in something that doesn't do as well as we had hoped. Obviously, critical acclaim is important too, but we're really about trying to stretch out our investment dollars as far as we can, and make good on our investors' money. It's theirs, not ours. The fact that money kills creativity is no new concept. However, it can be no doubt difficult for a writer to compose a story not knowing if the investors will care enough to see the story through. As Fresco said in an official statement on the cancellation of Santa Clarita Diet, Netflix took a chance on this odd show, and for that we will always be grateful. They were supportive, ever positive, and appreciative of our work. Until about noon today.
Yeah, I'm sorry that happened to you.
Not all recent sitcoms have ended in abrupt cancellations like the ones already mentioned, and Crazy Ex-Girlfriend is an example of a show that began with a distinct, stated purpose and had the opportunity to follow through with that and receive the ending that the creators had always intended.
Pitched 4 seasons all those years ago, 4 years ago when we pitched the show. We pitched 4 seasons then, which is an unusual thing to do. Actually, most people don't. They pitch the pilot and a few sample episodes.
Crazy Ex-Girlfriend is a show created by Aline Brosh McKenna and Rachel Bloom about Rebecca Bunch, also played by Rachel Bloom, the titular crazy ex-girlfriend, who leaves her life behind to follow her childhood ex-boyfriend to a small city in Southern California. Throughout the course of the show, the central premise is turned on its head as Rachel's musical fantasies help her deal with identity, purpose, and her own mental illness.
Antidepressants are so not a big deal.
As Aline says in an interview about the ending, the rom-com elements became a mere backdrop for what the show is really about. It's refreshing making a romantic comedy where that wasn't really the focus of the conversation. It was about getting Rebecca to a place where she knew who she was. She accepted herself and what her fantasies had been and how to bring that into the real world. The ending instead focused on Rebecca becoming clear on her own identity, and this was demonstrated with 6 simple words that had been planned from the very beginning.
This is a song I wrote.
Here's Rachel Bloom talking about those final 6 words in another interview. There's so many emotions in it. I think the most surreal thing is that when we pitched the show, we ended the pitch with her saying, "This is the song I wrote." I think because we always knew what was happening, the hardest thing in writing the finale was the debate of, how do we get there? The success of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend's ending came about because of a good relationship between the writers and the network, and a clarity of purpose that was established in the very first pitch. Unfortunately, this is more so the exception as opposed to the rule, and even having a planned ending can become an inescapable curse.
And that, kids, is How I Met Your Mother.
How I Met Your Mother was a sitcom that dominated television in the late 2000s and early 2010s. During its 9-year run, it arguably became the millennial audience's Friends or Seinfeld. However, when considering shows of the 21st century, it no longer has the same legacy. This is in part due to some of the show's more problematic elements becoming dated very quickly, as well as a lackluster finale that managed to not only alienate most of its fan base, but demolish the entire premise of the show that had made it so popular in the first place. The premise was this: Ted Mosby, played by Josh Radnor, in the year 2030 is recounting to his 2 children the story of how he met their mother when he was in his 30s. The show was marketed as being a rom-com told in reverse, and although fans stayed loyal due to the unique comedic tone and relatable characters, there was also a central mystery that kept them interested: the identity of the mother. The promise, then, of the ending would seem simple enough. In the final episode, we would presumably finally get to see Ted's first meeting with the mother, and then perhaps their future together leading us to the point when future Ted is beginning his story. However, the creators, Carter Bays and Craig Thomas, had a twist up their sleeve that they had prepared for all the way back in 2007.
Wait 1 second. Okay. Stay.
In 2007, during the show's second season, the creators realized that the actors playing Ted's children might end up looking too old when the show came to a close. So they hastily shot a version of their ending that they could use later down the track. This was the ending we eventually got, the final twist revealing that we were watching a traditional rom-com the entire time, that of Ted and his friend and occasional romantic interest, Robin, played by Kobe Smulders. Except, were we? The chief complaint from critics and fans over the ending was the narrative beats that had to occur to make this ending fit within the story that had been created by the time we got to the show's 9th season. Robin was now married to another one of the series regulars, Barney, played by Neil Patrick Harris, and Ted had long since moved beyond his romantic interests in Robin. To orchestrate this ending, the show had to kill off the mother, divorce Barney and Robin, and have Ted admit his love all in the space of less than 10 minutes. It seemed even to the series star, Josh Radnor, to be perhaps a bit unnecessary of a narrative twist. They had mentioned to me the twist about the mother in the first season, and I kind of put it out of my head. I didn't know if they would actually want to come back to it and do that, especially after Kristen, because she was so wonderful and the fans seemed to really take to her. So I asked them, are you guys still doing that? And they said, yeah. Setting aside whether or not it was an objectively good ending for the show, it demonstrated an unwillingness from the creators to waver from their original ending, despite the journey that their characters had gone on over the course of 7 years. In learning from this, it is apparent that a television writer cannot just simply know their ending, but also remain flexible to the growing and changing narrative that can evolve during a show's run.
That's it.
That's it.
No, I don't buy it. That is not the reason you made us listen to this.
At this early stage in my research, it is still hard to determine what the best course of action is for a television writer when approaching the structure of their series. The example of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend would suggest that a well-structured story can translate easily to a television format, but only in the circumstances where a network is eager to be a partner to bringing that full story to life. At the same time, though, a television series can run for years longer than originally intended and go through a number of changes. To then remain dedicated to your original narrative could result in an inorganic ending. Whatever the best course of action is, I think it would be fair to say that the changing landscape of television is challenging storytellers to really think outside of the box in adapting their stories to screen.
Because there's always more show. I guess until there isn't.